So I'm going to try to do this in one take, so bear with me. So this is a video about the continuity between sort of mundane and supramundane like beliefs or insights or etc. First, like belief is sort of problematic. You could say like anticipation, expectation, or like more generally just sort of like the very being and seeming of the world, like how it appears and the affordances that it has. So the claim that I'm making is something like mundane like beliefs or whatever, and super mundane beliefs or whatever are like qualitatively like the same kind of thing, and the only difference is sort of the matter of degree along some particular axes that I'll talk about in a moment. So what I mean by mundane is just like remembering like what you ate for breakfast, or like your belief about like what color your car is, or like what so and so said earlier, or like what you're going to do later. So just like sort of like the most mundane of mundane, kind of very basic kind of things that you use in a very contemporaneous way to kind of like navigate the world. And then like super mundane is something like things that are like really deep, that kind of affect like the being and seeming of the world in like a really like deep and or phenomenological and or like existential way. Um, so so in some sense qualitatively different, because like lots of stuff doesn't seem to like touch that, but I'll claim they're just like kind of the same thing, and we don't notice because, well, for reasons. Um, okay, so that was the claim that they're the same. Mundane and supermundane are the same. And so to explain this claim, we need some sort of conceptual pieces. One is something like I want to call it like bottlenecked updating, or like bottlenecked change. And the whole phrase is something like durational time attention bottlenecked updating. And so the idea there is that the system, body-mind system, can't change all at once and can't change instantaneously. So it's sort of like only little bits of it change at once. And those little bits can be like really high dimensional and touch many things, but there's a way in which like it's constrained. Only so much can change at once. And that change has to happen over real time. So it's kind of like stuff changes sort of only where attention is. And so I want attention in scare quotes, because it's like not quite like what we think of as attention, but it kind of is. Um, okay, so that's one piece. Things like there's sort of a spotlight of attention, kind of, and that sort of moves around, and that's how things get changed little by little by the system. Um, okay, so that's one conceptual piece. Another conceptual piece is layering. So this thing is moving around, and like changes are being made. Something that happens in the system is that sometimes changes will go in on top of other changes. And I didn't work out how I was gonna like unpack that. But the base like the black box mechanism is something like if a change goes in on top of another change, the change on top sort of has to be undone or has to move before the change underneath, the change that's been layered over, can change. So sometimes changes that happen sort of lock in the thing that's like that, the thing underneath it, and the thing underneath it can't be labile until the thing on top of it gets removed. Um, so I might talk about more like why that is, but it's related to this bottleneck thing. And it's related to some other pieces here. So because of this layering thing, you can think of like beliefs or like state like aspects of the system to kind of be at various depths. So mundane sorts of beliefs tend to be relatively less layered or more shallow, and then the super mundane stuff tends to be deeper. Uh, and depth is like a little bit misleading because there's a way in which like it's sort of all like on top, but that's like a whole other story. Um, okay, so let's see. Oh, okay. So just an important kind of piece of this is that um, we're sort of layering and delayering like all the time. For the relatively shallower stuff, if we kind of realize that our friend's car or whatever is not gray, but it's kind of like a dirty white or something. Usually like that will have been like a little bit layered, but because of the things that we're perceiving, like that impinges on the system, and so then things get moved around a little bit, like some delayering occurs, and then like relatively quickly, then we come to like realize that it's like dirty white, and then we make use of that information to like tease our friend or like have a better sense of the kinds of colors of cars on the road, and like that kind of stuff. So there's this kind of layering, delayering that happens all the time. There's sort of so it's harder to delayer stuff that's deeper, because there's sort of only so much slack or only so much kind of hot swap space at any given time. And as a side note, meditation sort of makes more hot swap space available by kind of rearranging things in like a Tetris-like manner. Um, okay, so layering and layering depth. Okay, so in addition to like this layering depth stuff, there's also sort of tangledness. We can think of when we're perceiving things, at least for an untrained mind, um, things are kind of tangled together. So like moments are bound, like sensory phenomena kind of come all at once in sort of a gestalt, and we have like objects and stuff like that. In addition to sort of objects, there's also like like a perceiver. There's like motivational aspects like suffering, and stuff like that. So let's see. So there's like a relative degree of tangledness in that some types of things are sort of tangled into like every mind moment, and some types of things are sort of only are tangled into like relatively fewer mind moments. Things like the things related to the three characteristics in Buddhism, are sort of more tangled into like every mind moment. And it's not just not just stuff related to the three characteristics. There's a bunch of other stuff too, but like those are like kind of special, but sort of only almost only in the sense of like how deep, and how sort of tangled they are through like every mind moment. Okay, there's other stuff that can be very, very deep, even deeper than three characteristics. And it varies sort of between people, um, and stuff like childhood traumas, and just like a bunch of other stuff, can be at sort of commensurate or like relatively similar depths. It just sort of depends. Okay, so let's see, and then like yeah. Okay, all right. So one of the things that happens in meditation is unlayering and untangling. And again, that has to happen little by little in real time. And so for things that are relatively deep and especially for things that are relatively tangled, a tremendous amount of the mind sort of has to be walked, because like that particular thing has to be like untangled from like almost every mind moment. So like in order for like really deep stuff to kind of be like gathered and turned over, kind of like in some sense like taken as object, like as its own thing, or like deconvolved, or like disembedded from kind of everything else, a tremendous amount of the mind sort of has to be touched. Like the attentional spotlight has to kind of very narrowly kind of trace like a space filling curve like through a tremendous amount of the mind. So let's see. But like, yeah. So so this is like still my position, but like I'm realizing like there's sort of holes in, like sort of the argument that I'd have to like unpack more. But this is like still kind of like an overview of how I'm thinking about it, and then maybe subsequent videos or like a blog post or something, can like fill in the gaps. But this is like kind of how I think about the whole thing. And this is a toy model, but this is like sort of been my experience. So again, the position being that for things that affect like the very being and seeming of the world, like that just sort of means like more depth and like more tangled, and just sort of more stuff has to be touched before like, yeah, the disembedding. And so I used the word gathering before, and it's like things that were sort of spread out in many, many mind moments, with no pre-given ontology sort of become like ontologized as such as a single thing, and then like that can then be sort of interacted with as such by the rest of the system, and then like updates can occur, or like recontextualizations or refactorizations or reconceptualizations, and then you get insights into fundamental things about one's experience of the self changes, fundamental things about one's experience of suffering changes, fundamental things change about one's experience of like permanence or impermanence, or like eternalism or nihilism or non-eternalism, and that kind of stuff. Um, but but part of the intuition that it's like kind of all the same stuff is that the things that one is doing to kind of have these effects occur, not directly, but they happen by themselves with like proper practice, is just the same kind of stuff that produces the changes in beliefs about friends, colors of cars, like that kind of stuff. Um, I think part of the reason that things like the three characteristics are experienced as special is because they are made salient by like a teaching ontology, and having like an intention to affect them. This is kind of a straw. Different teachers will emphasize and de-emphasize things in various ways, or say to do things directly or to do things indirectly. Um, but but the mind will like try to figure out. The mind will sort of try to make it real, hopefully in sort of a bare metal way and not kind of like a fake confabulated way. But the mind will try to figure out what's up with like a particular view or a particular set of teachings. So focusing on three characteristic-y type stuff, all things being equal, will kind of cause, will make it more likely that that kind of stuff will be encountered like relatively before like some amount of like deep traumas or like mundane stuff. So I call that kind of like depth first practice. And from a distance, it's been my experience that people will have changes occur into those sort of those kinds of big types of things. But then there's like a lot of cleanup, integration, et cetera, et cetera. But one can also do a breadth first thing. It's a little bit like sort of more easier to get lost, but with sort of good navigation, global wayfinding, it's actually possible to kind of just do like trauma-y type work, just do mundane type work, which if done right starts to happen at a finer and finer and finer grain. And one can do a tremendous amount of kind of breadth first work, uh, and and then at some point, kind of spontaneously, uh, the like supramundane stuff will kind of like start to happen. And there's sort of other ways to schematize this. So a lot of stuff is sort of more depth firsty. My stuff tends to be more breadth firsty, but it's all sort of same playing field. Um, okay, all right. That was a quick and dirty overview of this claim, this position, this thing.